Welcome to the Lurk Here podcast. My name is Bethany, and I am here with my co-host Jarrell and our lovely guest today, Verta Maloney. Verta, welcome to the Lurk Here podcast.
I'm so happy to be amongst the lurkers, or to be in community with fellow lurkers.
Hey, there you go.
Well, in your own words, introduce yourself. Who are you, and what mission are you on?
In my own words, I'm Verta Maloney, and I am all love with appropriate doses of rage. And I am on a mission in this life that I have to become, as a good friend of mine would say, a good ancestor.
That was deep. Wow, we just went straight into it. I love it. Yeah, let's riff a little bit on that. I really love the perspective that you're taking of really, thinking holistically about the human being and what that means in our day-to-day lives and the work that we do, right? I think all three of us here are really passionate about this idea of creating spaces that are, celebrating people's identities and culture and the whole being. And you've done a lot of work around this in particular. You've done all kinds of community-based work, really bringing, different folks, women, non-binary, marginalized communities together, and really helping shape the narrative. How do you see that landscape shifting in some of the work that you're doing now?
Wow. Wow. That's it's a great question. I think so. When I'll say that the being a good ancestor came from a friend of mine. Her name is Layla Saad, and many years ago, she wrote a book called White Supremacy and Me, where she kind of started this workbook process around unpacking how white supremacy shows up in the world and how we can live a life where we are currently aware of the fact that we're going to be an ancestor one day. So how do we actually live to be the ancestor, that we want to be for the future generations? And I think that why that kind of connects for me right now. I don't know if do you hear my puppy in the background?
Yes. But I have a puppy and I have the same problem.
Like,
so
okay,
continue.
great. So I was like, y'all hear Murphy back here acting like I'm not trying to do this podcast. So I mean, all day chilling, sleeping, and now acting up, talking about let's play. Like, come on now. But this whole concept of like living being really aware of how we're living right now and making sure that we are just being intentional. And I think that one of the shifts that I see happening, and I actually don't think it's a shift for those of us, whether you are, that are in communities that have historically been marginalized. It's not as big a shift for us, but the fact that people are realizing how othered people have been, realizing that if we don't collectively do things together to support the most vulnerable among us, we will only be next on that chopping block, right? And so I feel like the shifts I'm seeing are around how do we gather more in a personal, very interconnected community kind of way. Which is a shift from, I think, the parasocial, the, connecting online. And I think those are important as well. But I feel like we're realizing how human connection is just so important and vital, particularly in these political times, in these things going on in the world for the climate. We just realize we have to be in community. So that's a shift that I'm seeing in my own practice. And I think it's really wild because, as you all know, I'm an elegant dinosaur. I've been on this planet for 5 decades. And so I've lived in a time before we had cell phones, before we had, not before video games, but like they were on the come up, and they were still on some big ass computer in somebody's server room. But so I'm seeing this, I don't know, just going back to things that are so innate to us as humans. And so, yeah, I don't know if I answered the question at all, but there we go.
No, absolutely. I think because that's kind of where I wanted to get to, is just this idea that at the center of, I think, all of our work, it's really diving deeper into people, right? And if we're talking about building communities, and there's a lot of people out there that talk about building inclusive gaming communities or inclusive communities in general, but I feel like what we're getting at here is so much deeper, because we're thinking really beyond just what does community mean, but deeper into who they are as people and the challenges they face. And so for me, because community building is it's long game work, right? And it's difficult. What are some of the maybe challenges or resistance that you faced in trying to create these, representative communities?
Well, I think what you just said is one of them, that it's long game work and the failure to acknowledge that. And I don't know, we've seen this, right? Like people just pop in and like, great, we're going to create a community. And they're like, you're like, but you don't just come somewhere and say you're going to create a community, because the community was already there. We're not like going to Christopher Columbus this shit. Like those things were there. We can galvanize, we can learn, like, are we listening? Are we doing those types of things? And so, I think that's one, like not seeing the long-term nature of it and that it's not just transactional, right? We really want to build relationships. So I think that that's one of the challenges. I think another challenge is that community is also contextual and cultural. So like understanding that how you might do that in one place or one given moment is not going to be exactly the same someplace else. And how do you kind of like honor and respect that and not take it as a negative, right? So just because doing it in this one place is going to look different, or there are different ways that you would go about it, it's not a bad thing. It just is. It is a thing, and it's something that we have to be mindful of as we do that and just respectful of. And I think another challenge is, I do honestly believe that there is a belief out there that community is actually not important. So like kind of this notion that we can just, it's secondary. I kind of found that as, so the work, I'm really big on energy, like connecting with people, like reading a room. I think I'm actually really good at it. And so sometimes like I would work in groups, we would be facilitating sessions, and we would have planned all of these things and been really intentional about, like, when do we need to take a break? What does that need to look like? Changing up course because of what's happening in the room or things like that. And anytime we would facilitate it, if we ever ran out of time, so there's also content that we have to give, it would be my stuff that would be on the chopping block first. So it's like, okay, Verta, we don't have time to do that activity. Or, okay, Verta, I know it's really important for them to probably talk to each other and take a break right now, but can we shorten it? Or, okay, Verta, yes, you wanted to do that community builder right now, but we can't do it. And so I think that sometimes people like see it as like very secondary, if not like third area, if that's the word. Look the word for something that comes in third. And sorry, Murphy's getting bags now. He's chewing on them. It's a whole thing over here if we had video. So yeah, I think the third is just not elevating it as important as revenue, or elevating it as important as the things that people are supposed to learn, or as elevated, as the game. if we're going to talk about like gaming communities as well, right? So those would be the three things. Those would be the three challenges that I would say. I think there are many more, but those are the ones that come to mind.
When you said, you're sort of bringing back some of the maybe older vibes that you had caught on early, are there things that you sort of wish would hang on from those early days, or that you really would love to see come back full swing in a way into this sort of new landscape?
It's a great question. One, I think, is connected to what I said about doing, building community in different places requires us to honor those different spaces. I honestly feel like back in the day when we did not have, oh my God, how
She said it.
Old am I? What?
It's all good. We're close. We were in the analog
not
days.
far.
Yeah,
okay.
So we know the analog days.
Yeah,
analog
yeah.
days.
It's okay.
So even like when we were chit-chatting before about how before we started recording, Bethany, we were talking about how, it's like, I know what's going on in your life because I see the videos, I see the, I see the Instagram, I see that. I think that is, we've created this false sense of connection, and that had I like not heard from you in a while, I would have either picked up the phone or I would have done something like that to connect with you in this way where I think energy gets exchanged differently. And I
Yeah.
wish that I want us to go back to some of those ways that we just connected. Or I might have like written you a fucking letter, girl.
Yeah.
Like, you
Right.
know what I mean? And
Yeah,
what
yeah.
does it take to literally do that? And like just the practice of like handwriting something, putting it in the mail for you to get it, and like literally having to wait for your response, no instant gratification. There's some things about that just are that feel really special and that we can still do. We just don't do it as much. You know what I mean? But so I wish that
Yeah.
we had some of that. And I think what that does for communities, I think it makes them more precious. It makes you realize how important they are because I can't just then like dial someone else up or text someone else or you know what I mean? Like it's just different. And so I wish that kind of building of relationships is something that we could reignite. And utilize from the past of what communities were like. And I think everything at some point gets commercialized, right? And so I think that's kind of a thing that I don't know that you can like unring that bell. I just don't know what that would be like, right? So playing games was just about like playing games, video games, you know what I mean? Like in the community that existed around it wasn't so driven by the finances of that thing. And I think when that gets involved, it just changes it, right? It changes the tenor.
Right.
What are the things? And so I'm just curious about like, how do we recreate what it felt like to be in a community that was more about, we love this thing. We love doing it. We love talking about it. We love thinking about, oh, what if it was this? What if this, oh, what if they did that? Like, you know what I mean? And just having conversations about it. And not so much because that thing will happen, but because we just love the like conversation about it. And so I'm just really thinking about, where are the spaces that I can find that again, right? Like book clubs can do it for you, book clubs that turn into like just like dinner parties or even just like being able to meet with people and do things in community for a little while. That's just something that you vibe off of, stuff like that. So just like, how do we just reconnect with those types of things?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was sort of thinking about that commercial aspect too, which is like how do you transform sort of this content creator world back into that? I guess you don't. But I was kind of thinking that too. Like you can do a Patreon and get a handwritten note from your favorite creator, right? But it's not the same. It's not you paying for a friend at that point is what it feels like. If you subscribe to me, then we can be pen pals. It's kind of an odd feeling. But I'm finding myself longing for that as well.
Yeah. I honestly think we can just start doing it, to be honest, right? Like in a sense of like, what if we just decided, the three of us, that we were going to just like write each other letters or postcards this year? Like, what about, I don't know, like when you would go on vacation and you would send postcards back to people from your trip, like that was so cool. I just think there's something about getting that. Like I thought about you in the moment. And I know that happens when someone can send you a DM or send a screenshot of something that's happening, right? But there's something, I don't know, there's something really intimate, if you will, about like sitting down, taking the time to like write something or to like literally pick the postcard for that person because you're like, I know they're gonna like this thing. And then getting it like, with the stamp from, whether you were in Turkey or whether you were in Seoul, like it's just kind of cool. So I think that actually we have the tools to do those things. We just have to have the will to do them.
You were talking a lot about energy earlier too. And I think that's how I see you a lot. When I see you as a leader, I think of that.
That's so sweet.
Could you break that down? Because I think I get it because I've worked alongside you and I've interacted with you, but what does that really mean in a leadership position or really anything? What do you mean by sharing energy and leading with energy? Because you don't mean excited energy. We're talking about a different kind of energy.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's obviously the whole like new agey that we are all stardust folks. Like we are all made from the same thing, but it's
for
like,
sure. Yeah, we're hippies at heart here.
Hippie.
We get you.
And I name that because that's a part of it, right? I think that to lead with that in mind means that for me, I don't go into a space with a group of people or into like a one-on-one meeting with people without acknowledging or feeling what is going on for them in this world and in this moment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I just always want to know, how is that showing up for you today? And that, what does it mean that we can get through, and what does it mean that we just have to table, right? And I think it's an acknowledgement of each other as actual human beings. I find that we live in this really fast-paced world, particularly with technology moving at the speed that it does, that the product trumps the people that are there to like make the product come to life, or to actually literally make it. And the other thing is, like, so I'm first generation. My family is from the Caribbean. My mom is from Guyana and my father's from Barbados. And I realized recently that I didn't realize this recently. I've like always known it, but it's becoming really much clearer now. So we'll get on and like someone will send me like, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:03, and they're like, Verta, do you have such and such? And I'm like, good morning. Like, can we, like, I get it. Like, we got stuff to do, but I know that. Like, and that's just like, I was brought up with that. Like, you don't like not go into a room and greet the people in the room. You don't not say good morning. You don't, like, to people that you know, right? Like, you know, I live in New York City, so my daughter's always like, you need to stop with the eye contact. Like, I be looking at everybody trying to acknowledge them. Like, it does not matter. It is the person that is houseless on the train, whatever. She's like, please stop looking at them, because they go come over and they go talk to us. But it is like, it's just something that's so innate in me, and I just feel like that eye contact and that kind of connection, and acknowledging your just like being, right? So that's what I mean by energy. I also feel that if you pay attention, you can harness that energy in literally any direction that you want it to go, right? So if you go into a space, into a room with a bunch of people, and you cannot sense that there's tension in the room, or you're ignoring it. And I'm blown away by the fact that there are people that don't even notice it. I'm like, don't you feel what's going on in here? And they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, these people are tight. Like, what are you talking about? And what it means is that because I'm in touch with that, I sometimes just naming it gets it, like, it brings the level down. And sometimes I'll go into a space and I'll be like, look, I know that we are all like, there's an energy here that people might be upset about things, this and that. And then it starts to diffuse it, but it also allows people to speak on it so that we can move with it. If that's where we need to go, move through it, do whatever. So those are some of when I say energy, that's what I mean. And I think that at its core, it is the acknowledgement that I bring my being, physical and otherwise, into a space. So does everyone else. And we're interacting with and without words in that moment.
I totally love that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, right, we're all human beings on the same planet. So to acknowledge the fact that we are, you know, in every space that we're in is really acknowledging the, you know, our reality. Like, we're here, we're doing it, we're together. So that's incredible. And I feel like, you know, when you start to do that, like when you start to reframe you know, these commercialized spaces, to think about people and energy and leveraging your innate kind of intuition to understanding how these spaces balance out. I mean, I feel like that's in a lot of ways how to create more representation and inclusivity within spaces, because you're not only, you know, let's throw the gender, let's throw all of that out. It's really at its core understanding who people are and how they interact with each other. I mean, and so as a leader, you know, that, because there's a lot of corporate leaders out there that are like, you know, hiring high performance coaches and things like that to try to figure out how to be more empathetic. But, you know, if we were to talk to some of the lurkers out here, what's one thing that you feel like you can do as a leader, you know, to really tap into that energy? Like, what's maybe a best practice that you would recommend for a leader?
I definitely think asking people regularly, how did I show up, or how was I perceived in that moment? So I don't think people do this enough. And I don't mean like feedback, like, oh, I'm giving you a love right here, give me a feedback review. Like, I don't mean it in that sense.
Your annual review.
My annual review says that you play nicely with others. But I mean, like, I used to often, I would just like send like a little quick survey to people. I know people like, well, they probably so tired, but anyway, I was just like, okay, like I want to answer these questions. Like, um, am I able to, do I read the room? Or do you feel like I understand what is happening on the team? Um, Even as simple as I used to have people count the amount of times that I apologized in a meeting for me so I could kind of see like what's happening for me. Or
Mm.
I would say the amount of times that I referred to people by name. Like there's things like that that you can do and just like have a trusted friend kind of like track that stuff for you. Because if you're not tracking how you're showing up in the space and you're not really trying to understand that, then you're never going to know. So I think that's a really practical thing that people can do. I think that another thing is I I'm in a place in my life, and I've been here for probably longer than I should be, where I don't really give a fuck about my weaknesses in the sense of there's some things that are just not your jam, and I'm not going to try to keep fixing those things at the expense of the things that are my strengths.
Mm.
Because sometimes that happens, right? It's like, oh, you get this list of you need to improve here, you need to improve here, you need to improve here. But then it's like, but okay, so I'm not great at, I don't know what the, like, if I'm not so great at the follow through on the team, then maybe I need someone to help me with it, or I need a tool that will help me. But do I need to spend and go to workshops and do anything like that? I'm not going to do it. So I want people always to lean into their gifts. Obviously, if the thing that you're like, not doing well, I never even asked at the beginning if cursing was allowed on here, so y'all can edit out
No,
whatever
you're
y'all need
good.
to
You're
edit out.
good. You're good. Yeah.
But
I'm gonna bleep them all out.
like Verta never curses, which is so not true. Um, but I think that understanding your gifts and strengths and understanding your weaknesses and deciding which ones of the weaknesses are just like gonna just stay weak. Like I don't spell well. Like spell check is here for that. Why would you need to focus on that? I'm giving like kind of like not great examples, but I don't know if I have any more. And because y'all got me. It's earlier in the day for y'all over on that other coast, but it's about 4:39
No,
on a Friday over
I'm on the
here.
East
You're
Coast.
on the
I'm with
coast
you.
too.
I'm
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
you. Yeah.
So first, the lurker has to decide if they really want to come out. It's okay to be a lurker. It's okay to be someone who's in the background that supports, right? As long as that's what you decide that you want to do. So I'm gonna assume that this is someone who wants to step into being more in the front, right? And so if you are someone who's like, I like kind of pay attention and I'm looking at all these things, I think the first step is to find someone who is showing up the way you would like to show up and let them
Mm.
know, right? So first say like, Jarrell, I really love, you're like, hey, can I get a meeting with you? And you'll be like, of course, because you're Verta. And then you'll say, and in that meeting, I'll just, or in that introduction or however it is I do it, like I really respect the way that you kind of show up and give a very specific example of something that that person did, right? When we were in this meeting and you told them this, and I want to learn how to do that. Do you think we could talk about ways that maybe you could help support me with that? So I think it's finding someone who shows up the way that you want to show up and see if they can support you, right?
Right.
And so that's number one. I think another thing about lurkers in general is they're very observant. I think that people think that just because you're not talking, but I think that they're probably some of the most observant and likely some of the most empathetic people that are out there. They just don't put that
Mm.
out there. And so the second thing I would say is, however you find that's comfortable. So whether it's that you email this to someone or whatever, but if you are in a meeting, if you're in a community session, and let's say that the community manager is leading something and you notice something, you can say, I think you still should go to someone that you respect. Don't do this with someone who's an asshole. Um, and say, hey, like I've been in meetings and there's a couple of things that I've noticed. A couple of them you've already done something about, but is there a way that I can share those with you? I think what you're doing there is you're letting people that are in a role that is maybe a more leadership type of role or higher level of leadership than what you are currently in. You're making them aware that you are paying attention and that you have some ideas about how to make something better. They're going to want to talk
Mm.
to you, have that conversation. And then in that conversation, you can say, and you should think about this before you get into it. Um, I'd love to help you with this one. And then that's going to put you side by side with that person to solve that thing and put you in the spotlight, but at least next to the person, someone who is already kind of like doing that leader thing. But so it gives you a little bit of cover as you kind of lean into that. So those I would say are two like really tactical things that I think Lurkers can do.
Yeah, that's super refreshing. I think right now a lot of the narrative is, leveraging AI and, using robots to do all these things. But I feel like where we're really getting to is this idea of going back, rewinding, and really thinking intentionally about how we communicate, how we acknowledge people, and really authentically connect with them. So it's truly refreshing because I feel like the world needs more of this. We need more humanness for sure.
Verta, if you had a story to tell about something in your career that made you go, yeah, this is why I do this like this, what would that pinpoint be? Is it, in my head, is it sort of like something that you've seen other people do the opposite and have been hurt from it, or seen others impacted by it? But why this way?
Oh, y'all asking me all these deep questions. Y'all didn't even send me these questions beforehand. That is true, Lurkers. They did not send them to me, so I have to think. I need a minute. So I'm gonna use a very today example. That may get at, I think it gets at this, but I don't know if it gets at it all. So I used to be the principal of an elementary school in the South Bronx in another lifetime. And I started an arts elementary school. And why we started that school was because, one, I love the arts. I believe so firmly in them. We find that in school systems or in schools where the system has historically neglected and undervalued the people there, arts are one of the first things that get taken away, right? So it's like, okay, the kids aren't doing really good in reading, so take away music class so that they can do some more reading. Or kids aren't doing really well in math, so take away the visual arts class so that they can get some more math, right? And so we just wanted to be a counter to that and disrupt that. So literally created a school, an elementary school, that arts was an integral part of the curriculum, and not because we wanted young people to necessarily become like the next, Esperanza Spalding or the next, John Baptiste and like all these things, but because appreciation for the arts means that you can like navigate all worlds and literally lots of cultures. So this is a story of why I do that. I remember one particular student, and he came to us. He was struggling in his previous school. He was in third or fourth grade at the time, and his mom just really wanted the best for him and just was having a hard time navigating that. And he was so vivacious. He loved to play with dolls, and he just was this brilliant little kid who did not fit the mold of what they wanted a little boy to show up as. And that caused him to just like get bullied and have a lot of things happen. And so he came to our school, and every year at the school we would do a play, and everyone was involved, whether it was costumes, whatever, like every grade, a performance, whatever. And I remember and so we would do it at a big auditorium, not in our building because we didn't have space for that. And I remember sitting in the audience, and what was the play? I can't remember. Not on This Island or something like that. I'll remember the name of it. And he was like, wherever he was on the stage, you wanted to look. Like he had found a place where he could shine. He could just do the thing that he wanted to do. And he just like, oh my gosh, he was amazing. I had family members there. They're like, who's that kid? Just a bright, bright light. And so I feel like he is one of the reasons why I continue to do what I do, because to be able to find a place where you can be seen, a place where you can really be yourself, a place where you don't have to hide because other people have decided how you have to show up, whether you are in third grade, whether you are, about to be 93, it doesn't matter. And like being able to say that I've been able to do that. And so I say it's connected to recent because he's on all of these ads in the New York City trains right now. And for a campaign it's about living with HIV, and he's like doing all of these amazing things, and he still struggled obviously throughout his life, but to see like that and to be able to go on the subway and see him, I mean, and it's just fucking mind blowing. And to know that I had any part of his life being where it is why I will continue to want to be in community, because those things can happen for anyone. We can have that impact on someone's life if we kind of care enough to be, I don't know, to be in community, because really that's what that is, right? We created this sweet school community. We there were so many, like, so Hunts Point in particular in the South Bronx is, it was at the time like infamously known for this docuseries that Ice-T narrated called Hookers at the Point. And people would be like, why are you starting a school there? And I'd be like, well, because there's kids there. What are you talking about? It had this thriving arts community. There was like dance theaters there. There was this whole crew called Tats Crew. They had done a whole ad with Allen Iverson back in the day where they were, you know, they were graffiti artists, and they were like taggers that like turned that into a legitimate business. And like their kids went to the school. It was just a brilliant, brilliant time and moment. And that to me was like, that's the community of the South Bronx, right? Like that is what's thriving there, what's growing there. And that was one way that I did community, and as a leader there. And yeah, so in a very, very long-winded way that you probably didn't ask for, that is one of the stories of why it is that I do what I do.
No, not long-winded at all. I think that's such an impactful story. You know, I think we all have similar kind of experiences, and that I think that goes back to just this idea that, you know, as human beings, like, yes, we're in gaming and esports, but we were also educators first. And I think that that perspective of being an educator, and we've had a few conversations on other podcasts around this. It really gives you that idea that the work that we're doing here, no matter what context, it's a much longer game.
Yeah.
And like you said, I really resonate with that idea that one interaction that you have with a person, you know, that can impact way down the line. And so this goes back to what you were saying of being authentic, of, you know, really recognizing people and connecting with them deeply, because you may never know what that interaction will do in the longer term.
Yeah. And I think like connecting it to a little bit to how I find myself in gaming, I would always say that I was, and I still say it, gaming adjacent. It was actually, it was like a conversation with Christina Maya over at Latinx Gaming that she was like pushed me to be like, Verta, just say you're a gamer. And I'm like, oh no, I'm like, I'm gaming adjacent. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really, you know, it's like it ebbs and flows with me. She's like, but that doesn't, she's like, you know, and she may have said this or not, but that's kind of like saying like just because I didn't ride a bike for a little while, that I don't know how to ride a bike, right? Or that's not something in my repertoire, right?
That's like, a really good way of putting
right?
it. Yeah.
Like it doesn't make you not, it just means like, you know, and it's always this comparison thing, right? Because you see people that are professionals, you see people that are really good, you see people that are, you know, but that we can all exist in the space. And so another part of that for me, and this is I think where educators matter so greatly and intensely within this space on all levels, right? K to 12 and beyond, is that if we're doing it right, we are allowing the gamers in our classrooms to show up as the gamers in our classrooms, and that we provide space for them in our classrooms and in our schools and in these educational settings to be gamers, and also to bring that skill set to bear on what it means to be a student. And I just remember like one time this mom, her son had done all these things. I won't say his name. He was just cutting up. He was up just all the time. And so she's like brought his whole gaming system to school. It was like, keep it here. He can't play games anymore. And I was like, okay, let's chill for a hot second, because this could make all of us even more miserable than we think if this is what we're going to do. But I know that another leader might have just said, yeah, throw it away, da da da. But I was just like, let's talk about like why this is important to your son, and is taking things that are important to people away, even if they are little, the right way to teach them how to be better humans. And it's like because we have a respect for it as an educator, I think we can show up differently for parents and for their understanding, but also for kids to be able to say, like, that's not something I want to take away from them. That's like saying, like, you love reading, I'm going to not let you read books as your punishment. What? Like, that's wild. So that's something else, like, for me, that has been a connection, a connective tissue for like how I even found myself in, like, very more directly in gaming, right? Because one, community to be built there, community, and there's exclusionary things. We talked about the shift that's happening in the beginning of this conversation, and one of the things is like the shift that's not happening, right? Like, we've come in and we've talked about how there are not enough Black women that are at the forefront of it, and I feel like I see that fading to the back again, right now that we're in this time and era. And not acknowledging that we haven't done enough to like uplift, protect, and make sure that Black women in gaming are honored. Same thing for people within LGBTQ community and like what it means to show up for that. And I feel like sometimes we like to do this like tokenism thing. It's like, yes, great, we've got a gay woman on this panel, so now we're good. We've covered women, we've covered we've covered other stuff, so like boom, we're done. And I kind of see that happening, and I see like the face of it being still not as diverse as the nature of who actually participates in video games. And that shift, I think that there were just a lot of people that were and a lot of companies, a lot of organizations that just did, what's the word that they say, they just like, I don't know, they were virtue signaling. They didn't really like want to change structurally. They just wanted to make sure that they didn't get caught out there during all the things that were happening in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. And now we find ourselves with some of their true faces showing. So we don't have to get into all of the details of that, but you all know what I'm talking about.
Verta, if you could look into the future, maybe about let's say a healthy 5 years from now,
okay,
where do you hope a lot of these seeds that we're planting now in community and sort of opening up this space, what's an ideal 5-year projection for you? What would you hope this all looks like?
Wow. So one of the activities about rooted in a lot of the work that I do around oppression and anti-racism is generational thinking. So they actually push us to think like 7 generations from now, what will the world look like because you did, or you had this thing that you wanted to have happen in the world. And so 5 years from now, getting to the place where I like the vision I have in my mind of like this brilliant world that exists would mean that barriers to access are not ignored. And when I say that, like, we just know that there are many people that cannot get access to things, like whether it is internet that is stable in order to like game, whether it is fresh water. Like in 5 years from now, I'm hoping that we are better situated to have solved for access. And that's a bare minimum. Sadly, I think we're at a bare minimum state with that, right? But that is something that's not happening anymore, right? Like that we are figuring out ways to make sure that access is given to as many people to things that are just, I think in some instances vital for their existence, obviously, and in other instances vital for their opportunities and options in the future. And 5 years from now, I hope that when I think about technology, I think about what's happening in AI, I think about all of those things, that there are at least 100 times more inputs that look like me that are feeding these systems. So right now, yeah, it's brilliant, all of the things that are happening, but the bias that will show up will be because of the lack of diversity in who is feeding these systems and these engines. And in 5 years, it is my hope that like 100 times more right now than what is existing is the diversity of what's feeding all of these things. Yeah, that's what I would say. I kind of challenge a lot of people to start thinking about that like 7 generations from now, because it's a hard activity. But it was really interesting to like even think about like what is it going to sound like? What is it going to feel like? What is it going to smell like, right? Like, and what would it be to walk down your block? Even if you're not there, but like what's different for all of us in that place.
Yeah, that's a heavy way to think about things. I feel like a lot of folks out there are not quite
I
thinking
know.
7 generations, right? They're like barely
I'm
in this
heavy. I've been told that
generation.
I'm
Yeah,
intense.
yeah, yeah.
I've been
Nah,
told I
but
could
it,
be
it
a little
makes
intense.
it
That's
makes a
okay.
lot of
That's
sense
okay.
though, because I feel like we need more of that,
Mm,
like across all industries beyond just gaming
yeah.
and esports. I think we just
Yeah.
need to be
Yep.
more intentional about our actions in this world for sure.
Yeah, especially as we're
Hmm.
so excited
Yeah.
and sort of curious how this plays out. There's this,
Hmm.
double-edged sword that comes with it, which is we can scale and grow and things get exciting, but who's left behind as things start to funnel forward. It looks like a
Hmm.
pyramid to me a little bit. Like things get
Hmm.
sharper and more interesting and creative, but without sort of these human voices that have built it to that point. Um, yeah, could be a
Hmm.
very scary. And I mean, what we were talking about earlier, which is that human connection, all that energy. Where does that go? Where does that leave us to sort of,
Hmm.
be playful and curious with each other with all of this
Yeah.
newness?
And that's like the beautiful thing though, right? Like to me, right? So I'm not dystopian or anything like that, because without meaning that people can be, you can like everybody can have that. That's for them. That's not my ministry. I feel like I'm very hopeful because we are human beings and we've been built to like solve some of the most enormous problems that have ever existed. And even in the worst of times, aka 2025, um, we can we can find some of the most joyful things. Like honestly, like works and life and all of those things are going to flourish. And I'm so excited about the imagination that exists within humans. Mm, 85% of humans. Um, that will that in 5 years are things that are going to happen and exist that are going to change in good ways that we can't even imagine right now, that we can't even wrap our heads around it. I'm very excited for that, and it will only happen if we come together and we're in community around it, right? Because no one can solve something out in their own on their own, right? So I'm excited about it. I think there's some, what's it, pressure leads to diamonds.
There it is. Clip it.
Yeah.
2025. So real. So real.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Verta, what do you have upcoming, if anything? And
Mm-hmm.
where can people follow you if they want to know more about where you're going and what you're doing?
Okay. What do I have upcoming? I am in the relaunch of 45 Lemons. I will say like refresh, not relaunch, because we still exist out in the world. And so that is something that I have going on. I'm doing some stuff in fintech to like help people, I don't know, people through these hard times where they're trying to make ends meet, where eggs cost like $7,000, to like get some like tools that can help them be more financially secure and financially well. And where you can find me is Verta Maloney everywhere. There's not another one out there. And I'm pretty much Verta in all the places, whether it's Instagram, probably going to get more of a reply from me if you DM me there. But I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. Those would probably be the places. Like I'm on Facebook, but like who really wants to get a DM on Facebook?
Is there a Facebook group?
Ain't
Bringing this
no,
back?
right? Like what? Let me look. So Facebook they were at the cutting edge of moderation. Like they really had to get it together because those Facebook groups were a hot mess back then. But
They still are.
So those are coming. So those are probably the two places.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing today and being on the podcast.
Thanks for
Love
having
talking to you.
me. I love
Of
talking
course.
to y'all too. This was really sweet. Thank you.